From being the voice of the European Union's foreign policy to serving as special envoy for the Arctic and later leading the European Union's work in Israel, our guest today has spent decades at the forefront of international diplomacy. You're listening to The Ambassador's Room by the Center for Jewish Impact. I'm Mickey Dubry, your host, and thank you for joining me as we explore what happens when we bring leaders out of their embassies and into the studio. Our guest today has spent more than 3 decades helping shape the European Union's diplomacy. Today, he serves as the head of the European Union delegation to Israel, representing the collective interests of 27 European Union member states, while strengthening one of Europe's most important partnerships. Ambassador Michael Mann, welcome to the Ambassador's Room.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
We'll dive right into things. People often think an ambassador represents one government. You represent, quite literally, 27. Is there ever a moment where you walk into a meeting and think, how am I going to get everyone in this room on the same page?
Yeah, I mean, my job as an ambassador is different from your typical ambassador because, as you say, you're normally representing one country.
Sure.
I have 27 countries behind me, so clearly it's a different challenge. The thing is that the European Union agrees its policy in a sort of gradual fashion in meeting rooms in Brussels and elsewhere. So I pretty much know what the limits are of what I can say when I go into a meeting room because we have an established position. But of course, when you're having a diplomatic discussion with someone, they can throw a curveball to you. They can throw a question that suddenly makes you think, what is the answer to that? So that is an issue. We actually have regular meetings, get-togethers of all of the EU ambassadors who are stationed in Israel to sort of coordinate our position and discuss issues. You know, I think on the Israel relationship, it is more difficult for the European Union to have a single view. We have an established policy on Israel, but there are different nuances between different countries. I mean, we all know it very well. Some of the countries are much more critical of Israel than others, and some are very supportive. You know, I've been around a while. I don't want to be tempting fate here, but I tend to know what I can and what I can't say, and I haven't messed up yet, but it can always happen.
Okay, but building consensus with all those different opinions, not an easy job. You've spoken a lot publicly about your first visit to Israel over a decade ago, I believe. How that experience left a lasting impression on you and your want to come back and return to Israel. Here we are, 10 years later. You're now the ambassador to the European Union delegation here. Tell us a bit about that visit and what was one goal you had when you finally came here into this role?
You know, it was funny because you think you know something about a country before you come, but then you realize that you don't know anything. I was lucky enough to be asked to be the spokesperson for Catherine Ashton when she was the first High Representative Vice President of the European Union dealing with foreign affairs. And at the time, she came very regularly to the region and also to Israel. So I was on that trip. You don't really understand a country until you can get under the skin of the country, I think. So, you know, I came in and out and I was dealing with the communication side. So I had, roughly in front of me what I could say, what I couldn't say, what we wanted to do. But when I got the job here as the ambassador, because having come to Israel a lot in the past with Catherine Ashton, I then sort of left the Middle East for a bit. You mentioned in your intro that I dealt with the Arctic, and I was also the head of strategic communications in the European Diplomatic Service. I'd also been the ambassador to Iceland. And then in 2022, I was asked to take over the department that dealt with the bilateral relationship with Israel and with the Palestinians. You have your files that tell you all about the country, but it's only when you get to the country that you really understand it properly. And frankly, only living here can you really get to know it properly. Because, for example, I knew that October the 7th had caused a massive trauma in Israel. You say it, but until you live in the country, you only really then begin to understand it. I arrived here in my current job in September last year, 2025. The hostages were still being held. And, you could sense that everyone was deeply affected by it. And I remember the day when the hostages came home. I mean, basically, everyone was smiling. It was an extraordinary atmosphere in the country. So you learn over time, but really only by living in the community can you really get under the skin of the country. And I've been lucky. I've got a fantastic staff in our embassy. We call it delegation, not embassy. And they've taken me all over the country. So the very first place I visited was near Oz down in the south, one of the kibbutzim that was attacked on October the 7th. And we went to the Nova site. But I've been all over the country. I've met people from different communities, because what you don't really understand is how diverse Israel is. It's incredible. I've still got a lot of traveling to do. I've got another 3 years, so I'm hoping to get even better acquainted with Israel. And as an ambassador, you really are the public face of the people you represent, so you get to meet everybody.
You mentioned getting under the skin of the people, the culture, really understanding what life is like here in Israel. Do you think that your background in communications helped you have that more people-to-people approach? Because I think on one hand, there's the briefings, and there's what you can and can't say, like you mentioned. And on the other hand, you're a person. Israelis are people. Yeah. So do you think your background really helped you dive into the complexity of what it's like to understand society here?
I think it did, to be honest. I mean, I'm not a shy person. I think being a diplomat is much more difficult if you find it difficult talking to people. So I'm quite good with people. I mean, you got to be careful though, because being a spokesperson, you're sort of giving the line, and sometimes, as we all know, you can't really tell the whole story. So you learn to sort of obfuscate and sort of swerve questions. But in my current job, the whole point of it is to be open and to get people to be open with you. So I think definitely a background in communications really helps. Also, the fact that because I was a journalist, I had to get on top of political issues and get on top of international relations. So I kind of understand it a bit better than some people might, perhaps. But yeah, being a communicator, it just helps you to open people up. But in Israel, there's no BS at all. They just say exactly what they think.
I was going to say beating around the bush, but that works too.
There's no beating about the bush, and they say exactly what they think, and they're very open people. They don't mind if you tell them the truth back as well, so you can have a proper conversation. Diplomacy is sometimes about being diplomatic. In Israel, you can be much more open and to the point than you can in some countries.
I think that's very interesting, especially because you are from Europe. I'm originally from America. I can vouch, and I guess you can too. It's a very opposite side of business.
I'm British by background, and as we all know, British people never say what they mean. So there's this famous thing on the internet where you say what a British person says and what he means. So we
Two different things.
We always kind of obfuscate, but in Israel you can be completely straight up, which is very refreshing.
So before you served as Israel, like we mentioned, you were in the Arctic, which is quite literally the polar opposite, no pun intended, polar opposite of living here. I wanted to ask, what was that like for you, and how is it so different besides the obvious reasons of being here?
I was posted there in 2017. At the time, it was a bit quiet there because Iceland had previously applied to join the EU. Iceland was fantastic. I mean, it really is. I mean, the weather's terrible, let's be honest. But, you know, the life there is amazing. The Arctic, even before President Trump decided that he wanted to acquire Greenland, it was getting more geopolitically interesting because there are lots of resources there, rare earth minerals, and also geopolitically Russia with its ice melting was, you know, the sort of northern sea route was opening up, and the Chinese were starting to think about getting their feelers into the Arctic. So there was a lot of sort of geopolitical competition. Here, it's very different. I mean, we have a very interesting relationship with Israel in the European Union. Obviously, the relationship is historically extremely close. There's lots of people-to-people contact. There's lots of business contact. And, you know, Israel is actually more integrated into the European Union than most other non-EU countries. Yeah, the European Union is the biggest trading partner of Israel, second biggest investor. So it's such a close relationship. So that is the positive side. But unfortunately, we do fundamentally disagree on the issues surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So we have to sort of balance in our work enhancing the positive parts of the relationship whilst at the same time agreeing to disagree on the political side on the Palestinian issue. And of course, also one of my major jobs here is also to provide intelligence to my headquarters. So on the situation with Iran, the situation in Lebanon, the situation with Syria. So we produce a lot of reporting for our headquarters, which is shared with our member countries as well.
This raises an interesting question on the more human side of your posting here. While you're, as you said, gathering intelligence for your government and for the EU on this, you're also living through the wars. You're living through ballistic missiles. You have a family here. How is that for you, kind of balancing those two realities at once?
Obviously, the war kicked off by the horrendous Hamas attacks had been sort of going on in various theatres for more than 2 years when I arrived, just under 2 years when I arrived. And then I actually lived through my first real war. So my daughter was born on the 19th of February. That was 9 days before the war started with Iran. So it was kind of weird. But obviously, if she'd been born 10 days later, she would have been born underground, because I was absolutely fascinated. I went to Sheba Hospital. It's extraordinary. I mean, really extraordinary. I went to Ichilov and Sheba, and they both managed to move the hospitals underground within a matter of hours during a war situation. So we actually, from her 9th day, we were sleeping in our shelter in our basement every night for about a month. And I must say, the civil defense in Israel is absolutely extraordinary. One should never become complacent. One should never become blasé about it. But, you know, you have the system of alerts, home front command. We have the system of shelters. So I felt well looked after, I must say. But, you know, you talk about wars from your comfy office in Brussels, but when you're actually living through it, it's an entirely different thing. And the people here are so resilient. I mean, more than half of our staff are local Israelis. I mean, unfortunately, they've got rather used to it. They're so tough, and they just... What I'm most astounded by is how life just goes on. Cafes and wine bars are still operating.
Yeah, like how would you explain that to Brussels?
Well, I mean, you don't want to downplay it to Brussels, but on the other hand, you just have to say that the people here are unfortunately used to it, but also extremely well organized and extremely tough people, really. Life can always end tomorrow, but people want to continue living their lives. You'd go into Tel Aviv on a Friday afternoon and there'd be people in wine bars, and then the siren would go and they'd disappear into shelters and then come back out and finish their wine. It's quite amazing.
Our very bizarre reality. Another question kind of tapping into the dichotomy of both worlds of Europe and living here in Israel. Since October 7th, we've seen a frightening rise of anti-Semitism in the West, particularly in Europe. We see this in anti-Semitic attacks. We even see this displayed in pop culture. Very relevant examples with Eurovision. There were a few European nations that tried to block Israel's participation, and when they did not succeed to do so, they themselves didn't participate. How do you reconcile these two stark realities of living here amongst the Jewish state, but having those current events go on frequently now in Europe?
It's awful. I mean, there is no doubt that there has been a massive uptick in anti-Semitic incidents, and it's shameful. You know, people can disagree with the policies of Israel, but that should not lead to people who are Jewish being discriminated against and attacked. Is completely shameful, embarrassing, unacceptable. And again, I think, you know, there will always be ignorant, stupid people who are discriminatory and racist, but one shouldn't conflate a perfectly valid criticism of a country with a whole people. So there is a big problem of anti-Semitism. I was back in Brussels last week for work, actually, and I noticed some soldiers stationed outside a synagogue.
Oh, wow.
And it shouldn't really be like that. We take this very seriously in the EU, very, very seriously. We have a dedicated team in Brussels in the European Commission which works just on this issue. They put together a comprehensive strategy to combat anti-Semitism and to foster Jewish life in Europe. It's a 10-year strategy, and many things lead on from that. Each country has its own national strategy. There's a lot of money to spend, you know, whether it be on fighting online hatred, whether it be to literally strengthen security around Jewish sites. Education. Just recently there was a new program agreed under the Horizon program to look into anti-Semitism and Jewish life in Europe. So we're working hard on it. I can only hope that with a combination of the work that we do and the work that national authorities and local authorities do, and with a bit of improvement in education and fighting online hatred, things might get better. Hopefully, if the war goes away, then we can start getting things back on the straight and narrow again, because it's terrible.
It's terrible, but with programs as such that you describe, let's hope that in the 10-year plan we'll see a decrease. Changing pace a little bit. People in Israel know Ambassador Michael Mann. I'm curious about, if I may, Ambassador, just Mr. Michael Mann. When the meetings are over and you're not in a suit, who is Mr. Michael Mann, and what does a typical day in your life in Israel look like?
Oof, I mean, who am I?
What a question.
What a question. I'm a bit older than I'd like to be, for a start. I've got 5 kids, so I've got 3 grown-up sons. I've got an 8-year-old daughter, and I've got a 5-month-old daughter. I'm married to a lovely Romanian lady. We're very fortunate to live in Herzliya, in a lovely house, which is not very far from the sea. So I'm very happy that. So we don't have the sort of wild Tel Aviv lifestyle. We have a more sedate Herzliya style lifestyle. But, at the moment, because we have a little baby, we have quite a quiet existence. We're trying to make sure we get enough sleep. And there I must take my hat off to my wife, who is a rock. Honestly, the life of an ambassador is quite full. So I work, in the office every day during the week. We work actually Monday to Friday. We work a European week. And being able to go to the beach on Sunday when everyone else is at work is a nice thing. When we're not with small child, we like going out to music and going out for dinner. The restaurants here are absolutely fantastic, I must say. I mean, I'm a very tall, thin person, but I have actually put on considerable amount of weight since I got here. Things taste better here because it's so sunny here. You get your tomato in a Belgian supermarket. And it doesn't really taste of anything, but the tomatoes here have a different taste.
Very interesting. Well, we did create the cherry tomato through drip irrigation.
Very wise decision. Obviously when you're new in a country, you have to get to know people. I was actually on my own for the first couple of months here, so people were very kind to me, and I got invited to a lot of Shabbat dinners.
Nice.
And to know some people.
What's your favorite Shabbat dinner food that you've experienced?
Everything.
Moroccan dog?
Well, it's funny enough, there was quite a lot of that, because the first person who invited me is married to a lady whose family came from Morocco.
Lucky you. Best dinner.
Food, yeah.
Ambassador Mann, we're going to wrap up our time together with a quick round of speed questions. A little speed round. I promise they'll be easy. Okay. Just going to go through it and say what comes to your mind. Okay?
Good. Okay.
Coffee in Brussels or coffee in Tel Aviv?
Tel Aviv.
Why?
Just it's a bit more exotic somehow. It's a bit more expensive, but it's a bit more exotic.
It is. Café à four or café car?
I don't know. I don't understand.
Cappuccino or cold coffee?
Here, cold coffee.
Agreed. Regular milk?
Always regular milk.
One word or sentence in Hebrew that you have learned or love to say?
I actually love the word yofi. Yofi means that everything's cool.
Yeah.
Everything's great.
All right. One word that best describes Israel.
Diverse.
One place in Israel that everyone must visit.
There's too many.
You can do two.
Well, you should go to Jerusalem and you should go to Tel Aviv. It'll give you a big range of experiences.
Also, maybe culture shock. Speaking of culture shock, what is the biggest Israeli culture shock that you experienced when you first came here?
How rude can I be? The driving.
Yeah, that's fine. Very fair. Falafel or shawarma?
Falafel.
Israeli food that everyone must try?
Everything.
That's a good answer. If you weren't a diplomat, what career do you think you would have pursued? And I guess don't say journalist either.
Would I want to pursue or should I have pursued?
Like dream.
Rock star.
Cool. Maybe this is your rock star moment, full circle. One item you will be bringing home from Israel after your post here.
One of those hands that fends off evil spirits. I don't know what they're called.
Khamsa.
Yeah.
Khamsa. Yeah. That's a great answer. Every ambassador arrives in Israel with expectations and leaves with stories. For our last question, what's one story you think you'll be telling years after your posting here has ended?
Probably that my daughter spent the first few weeks of her life in a shelter.
Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us in the Ambassador's Room. It's been an honor and a pleasure having you in the studio.
Thanks very much for having me. It was great.
Great to have you here.